we quickly realized that, hey, there could be another path, and that's E1.
It's a mirror of the E2 basically, but the focus is not on the investment. There's no magical number. We talked about this. There's no magical number in terms of investment for the E2. So those will be the ones that I would say you can very quickly realize, hey, you have a couple of companies that you provide a service to here in the United States. Perhaps we should look into the E1 visa.
So Joaquin, E2 visa is our bread and butter. Everybody's, heard about it. But there is almost, if you will, like a little brother of it called the E1 trader visa. Now, not a lot of people are aware of the E1 visa. For some situations, it could actually be a better alternative to the E2 visa. So who would you say it is for and how to qualify?
I'll give you a little bit of background explanation on what it is. The E1 focuses not so much in the investment, as we've spoken at length before in plenty of interviews and talks that we had, but it focuses on commerce, right? And the trade, the country that you're from, right? There has to be a treaty country with the United States, has with the United States. So the key here to understand is that 50% of the trade or commerce has to be with the United States. Now, not total, meaning the international trade or commerce. So if you, for example, have 3 different countries that you deal with, Mexico, the United States, and Canada.
As well as your home country.
As well as your home country. You don't count what you're doing with your home country. You count 50%. If 50% of that trade and commerce from those 3 countries goes to the United States, then you can apply for this visa, which is the E1, right? So in here, we're not focusing so much on to substantial investment. What kind of business are you going to do, or what kind of business are you going to buy? It's about sort of consistency in the trade or commerce. Have you been, dealing with a lot of clients, a lot of, companies here in the United States? For how long have you been dealing with them? It can be just one big sort of trade or deal that you've made, even if it's like, millions of dollars. They want to see a consistent history of you dealing with the United States, having commerce with the United States, and then you can come in over here. Another great thing is that, just like the E2, but for the E1, it's a little bit more common, is that you don't particularly have to come here if you don't want to, but you can send, an employee of yours to come run things over.
Under E1?
Under E1, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So, basically to come and direct, the operations, expand the market that you already are dealing with, right? So you can send people over here. But it's a great opportunity for a lot of people who are in all sorts of industries. It doesn't particularly have to be, you're selling shirts or bananas, right? It could be, services. So if you have providing, say tech services, marketing services, whatever it may be, right? To different companies in the United States, then that could certainly qualify. So it's a really interesting one.
And what does it allow you to do? How is it different from E2? Hey, you want to come to the US, get the E2 visa, L1, or straight out a green card? We've been doing this for the past 10 years, and we wrote a book. It's called Own Your American Dream. What is special about this book is that we went back and have spoken to 21 successful applicants who opened up their businesses here and who are continuing to live the American dream. Hear it from them, because they talk about their fears, their mental state, what went wrong, what went right. The entire blueprint is there. You could just buy the book right here. You can just read it and make up your mind. Continue your video.
Pretty much the exact same thing. Everything.
So your spouse
country,
can work.
Spouse
Even
can
for
work.
5 years.
Spouse can, depending on the country, obviously. Children under 21 can come here, study and all that. So it's a mirror of the E2 basically, but the focus is not on the investment. Is more on the commerce that you've had with the United States and you continue to have with the United States.
Yeah, but there's a caveat to it, right? E1. Not every country that has a treaty with the U.S. For the E2 has the same treaty for the E1.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's a more condensed number of countries, if you will.
You can go essentially and just Google, E2 treaty countries, and then you'll have an official website of the government that tells you each country has a treaty with the United States, and it'll tell you E2, E1, or E2 only, and you can see right there which one applies.
So what are some of the industries that E1 visas are successfully used?
Well, the most common one, and we talked about, it doesn't have to be sort of like the tangible things, right? But they are the most common ones. If you're textiles or whatever it may be, sort of, vegetables and fruits or And it could be materials as well, right? It could be materials that you're sending out here to the United States. But certainly, as we've come into a new age of technology, these type of services are popping up much more. And obviously from overseas, people in the United States take advantage of that. The pricing is much better. So you want to expand on that, right?
Yeah.
So if you offer marketing service, maybe IT services, whatever it may be for these companies, then you come over here, you essentially are making the argument that, hey, I've been doing trade and commerce here in the United States with several companies. Now I want to do it with more companies.
Yeah.
So just allow me to come in here so I can expand my sort of clientele base. And I'll be able to do so if you allow me to come here to the States.
How about companies that are e-commerce companies and selling primarily to the U.S. market? Maybe Amazon FBA stores, maybe they sell through Shopify, but they have their maybe manufacturing plants or procurement facilities based out of another country. They're primarily exporting to the U.S. Would countries like that, well, not every country for sure, but would businesses like that qualify for E1?
That's a little bit trickier, right? And I know what you mean. A lot of people do, drop shipping and stuff like that, but they usually are getting, sort of the items that are selling here in the States in different countries. But so the regulations are not extremely clear on anything, to be quite honest, when it comes to immigration. But it is, sort of an assumption that it has to come from your country, right? So what you're doing is it's commerce between countries, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever it is that you're bringing over there, it has to come from your country, whether it be a service because you have the personnel in your country that's providing that service to companies here in the States, or whether it be more a tangible thing, where it be, shirts, textiles, whatever it may be, right? So that could work, right? So long as, you can make it the argumentation and you have the ability to prove that, what you're sending off to the States comes from your country, right?
Right. And when it comes to the renewal of E1, how do you renew it?
It's unlimited. You just got to keep showing them that you've what you stated on your initial application is true. Look, this is the plan. This is what we're going to be doing. This is what we're going to be focusing on. And then you've been doing it and you're progressing. It's all about progression. It's not about like really sticking to the numbers that you said that you were going to say. That you were going to do once you got here.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm looking to expand my business. Now I have 6, 7 companies that work with me, or they receive, or 6 or 7 supermarkets that receive my product. Right now, I want to do within the next couple of years, 20. Well, let's say you do 12. It's fine. You're progressing, right? Mm-hmm. You started from 7. You're at 12. It's a progression, and they want to see that. So long as you're progressing and you're going towards that, end goal, right? It's what they care about.
How about your trade volume? What if the trade volume decreases once you're here, let's say a year later? Do they revoke the visa?
Well, I mean, if the volume gets lower, it doesn't particularly mean that
because it's business at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, business is the ups, it has its downs.
Yeah, it's ups and downs. So what you want to do is just you make a convincing argument that things went down for X or Y reason, and now you have a plan set in order to expand on the original idea, and you have a plan of action to get to the numbers that you wanted to get to, right? In the end, what they want to see more than anything is, yes, of course they want to see the money is being made here in the States, but they want to see consistency with several clients, with several companies, not just one, or two. There's no magical number. We talked about this. There's no magical number in terms of investment for the E2. There's no magical number in here in terms of how many clients you need to have or companies you need to work here in the United States with. But it's got to be multiple, right?
But do they require a substantial volume of investment?
In terms of investment, not really. I mean, that's not the focus of the visa, right? But I mean, I want to say that you do want to show a progression before you apply, that you've had a history of, say, I don't want to put in numbers on these things because it's not on the regulations, right? I want to say that at a minimum, I would say a year or so, a year and a half, right, of doing business with the United States, and then you progressively growing that trade or commerce, right? So month 3 we're doing only 20,000, and then month 6 we're doing 40, and the year now we're doing 80, and then it's a year and a half and we're doing 100 and something. So that's something they want to see because it shows that you're growing your clientele base, and it makes sense that you want to come to the States in order to expand on that clientele base.
Do I need operations in the U.S.? Do I need to hire employees, lease an office space?
That's not particularly, necessary, but I mean, it's sort of like incidental to you growing, right? So most likely, if you want to, set up a sales team or something like that, or maybe set up a team that is going to be able to deliver whatever product you have in a quicker manner to your clientele. It certainly helps, but it's not particularly like an obligation.
So here at Visa Franchise, we deal with a lot of businesses. And again, as I said in the beginning, E2 is our bread and butter. But sometimes some companies who come to us initially for the E2 visa, we quickly realize that, hey, there could be another path, and that's E1. What would be some of the examples of companies that come to us that initially thought of the E2 visa, and later on we realized that, hey, look, E1 is very feasible for you?
It's funny that you ask that because sometimes, we encounter people that say, oh, like my business is a service-based business, right? Tech or whatever, it may be IT or, I don't know, marketing. And then we typically say, hey, this is something that's solvable, right? We just need to show that you're investing in other things like employees, et cetera, right? So those will be the ones that I would say you can very quickly realize, hey, you have a couple of, companies that you provide the service to here in the United States. Perhaps you should look into, the E1 visa. Who else do you deal with? What other countries do you deal with? Is it more than 50% internationally of the clientele that you deal with or the countries that you deal with? Does it go to the United States? If so, go for the E1. So I would say the service-based ones are the ones where we realize quickly, hey, perhaps this is a better path for you. But definitely on the tangible side of trade and commerce, we see that as well. They think that they have to make a substantial investment, but they've been making investments already in the United States. It's just a matter of like proving that 50% of it is between their country, their foreign country, and the United States. And then it's been constant, right? And there's been a history of it, and it's been growing. Yeah. So we quickly realized, hey, perhaps we want to do an E1 that looks like a more feasible path. And not only that, but you don't have to spend a lot more money in order to meet the substantial investment requirement of the E2.
How would a successful E1 petition look like? What would be the main components of it?
I mean, to make sure that you prove that the person who's coming in is prepared and in a position to expand the business and the clientele base, I think is one of the most important things, right? And as I said before, it doesn't have to be really the owners, right, of the company. If you want to send people over here to the United States that are going to be basically running the expansion plan here, that you can do so. But also demonstrate that you have had that track record and you have several clientele that you deal with here in the United States, and that your business is something that will potentially grow much more if you have boots on the ground, right? So those are the things that you want to really focus on and highlight. Hey, I've been doing business in the United States. I do commerce and trade with the United States, but if I was there or if I sent someone over there, then we would certainly be able to expand on that clientele base and expand on the trade that we're doing or commerce.
How would Visa Franchise help clients who are looking to get the E1 visa?
I mean, just like everything. I mean, I always like to say you don't want to go do things that you don't know by yourself. So starting with analyzing whether or not if it's feasible, right? Or if there's a different path for you to come into the United States. And number two, how to document, right, this information in the proper manner, in the manner that the regulations, tell you that you need to do it. And basically a strategy that puts forth a plan to the immigration officer is going to be reviewing the application, that you have a plan to expand the clientele base in that commerce and trade.
Let's say that the applicant successfully got the E1 visa approved, and now he or she is here, and they like the country, and they're thinking about being a permanent resident here. So in the case of L1, there's almost like a natural progression to EB1C. In the case of E2, again, there's no direct path, but EB2 NIW would be one way of looking at it. But in the case of E1, what would be almost like a path that you would follow? I know it's case specific and everyone's situation is different, but like what would be some of the green card paths that you would look at?
Once again, so E1 deals with commerce that from one country to the United States, right? Commerce or trade. So that means that you already have a company in the in your country, right? You have a company that operates, right, and has a lot of business with the United States. So that's essentially an L1 to a certain extent, right?
Right.
So you can position yourself pretty well for an EB1C. Say if you send someone or even yourself, so long as you can prove that there's personnel back at home, right, to sort of run the business. And then essentially what you're doing is that, hey, look, yes, I was on an E1, but now I want to be here on a permanent basis. I'm an executive. I've been an executive in my company. There's people who have been running, my company in my country, for several years now, ever since I've been in the E1. It's doing really well. We're doing really well over here. And we want to continue to expand here in the United States. So that entails me being here permanently. So let's do an EB1C. You don't have to go through an L1 in order to get an EB1C. This is actually a pretty good way to do so.
All right, Joaquin Rosales, thank you very much.